when we published the caricatures in Charlie Hebdo, we got 3 complaints from Islamic organizations, including one from a Wahhabi organization. But I am not sorry that we have this court case, and I am also glad that we are living in a country, in France, where we have a different system from the United States. Each country has its own legislation and legal system. Our laws and our tribunals are very public, and it is possible to have arbitration and see where one can go. The court case involving Charlie Hebdo was a very good moment, because Muslim organizations came and said, we think that Charlie Hebdo falls under the anti-racist law, because by publishing the caricatures, they fall under this law. We said that we are totally anti-racist. It was a drawing where we showed drawing where Muhammad was very down, crestfallen and stricken down because of the attitudes of the Islamists, who were doing very bad things to their own people. So we showed also that there were a lot of anti-racist caricatures. So the court recognized that the publication of the 12 caricatures was a contribution to the public debate and not criticism of Islam. So there is a difference between saying, well, Islam is an archaic religion, or it should evolve, or Islam is used to justify bombs. This is a discussion of ideas, but it's not a reason for allowing people to say you have to kill Taslima Nasreen, there should be a new Holocaust, or something like that. To say that you have to kill Mohammed Sifawi or Taslima Nasreen, I am very happy that people who said things like that in my country were taken to court and sentenced. Europe, prepare for a new Holocaust, which I have heard said by English protesters. This should have perhaps not merited prison, but certainly a certain fine. I think French law has to exist and has to evolve. For me, it is quite normal that there's an open and very polemical discussion. It's very healthy. One should not put Mr. Williamson into prison for what he said. It's not a simple matter. It's very complex, it's very complicated, and it's also a difficult fight that we have to lead. But it's still an open debate.
Mr. Swearingen, I'd like to try to reserve some time for audience questions. So okay. I do have another question for you immediately following, if you could keep your remarks very short.
I'll keep it brief. Why is this issue coming up? It's coming up because countries that, or populations that were formerly fairly insulated are now confronting ideas that they were not confronted with before. It's a byproduct of globalization. It's a byproduct of interactions between peoples and populations, other faiths, other religions. Just a byproduct of the entire globalization experience. And this is not something you're going to undo. And when taken into the context of how do you deal with different religious faiths within a single community, you can point to the United States, not to keep returning to it, but simply because the United States itself has had to deal with multiple faiths within its society for a long time. And when you get into this tit for tat through the legal system among religious groups over what is and what is not offensive to other religious groups, you have an escalation of constraints on freedom of speech, freedom of expression, which I think is unhealthy. And rather than go on about this, let me quote the Supreme Court, which I think said it very eloquently. And that is, in the realm of religious faith, and in that of political belief, sharp differences arise. In both fields, the tenets of one man may seem the rankest error to his neighbor. To persuade others of his own, to his own point of view, the pleader, as we know, at times resorts to exaggeration, to vilification of men who have been or are prominent in the church or state, and even to false statement. But the people of this nation have ordained that, in the light of history, that in spite of the probability that excesses and abuses may occur, these liberties are, in fact, in the long run, essential to enlightened opinion and the right conduct on the part of the citizens of a democracy. Now, what does this mean for the global stage? If you go and engage in this tit for tat on the part of Islamophobia to try and restrict criticism of that religion, the other religions have a similar ability to constrain on the other. This is not a healthy discussion of differences. This is not a means for resolving differences. This is simply a bottling up aggressions and differences that almost inevitably will come out in a destructive or counterproductive manner. And when you take a look at the Durban Declaration, you see 4 specific references that would, in this vein, constrict freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly in 2 cases. And this, I think, is extremely unhelpful in terms of advancing fundamental human rights and engaging in a real honest discussion of differences between individuals, between faiths, and trying to resolve them peacefully. And it's really disheartening that an organization charged with championing human rights, the UN Human Rights Council, results in a document that attacks the fundamental strengths and pillars of the entire human rights system. And I'll go ahead and just leave it at that, and then if you have a question.
Sure, I mean, speak.
Pardon, mais j'ai pas très bien compris ce que...
I haven't quite understood what Mrs. Forrest said on Williamson. Mr. Williamson, what discussion? Discussion on the Shoah? Debate on the... to know how many millions of deaths there were? Is that the discussion on concentration camps? The debate on... No, I can't really see it. Are we still just debating on that? Well, no, you're not going to attack me on this, are you? But I will give you a reply. In fact, I'm being accused of directly being at the heart of the Williamson, or at the origin of the Williamson debate, or the Williamson affair. I simply said that I have had a discussion with defenders of Article 19, according to the American vision of freedom of expression, which led me to doubt the fact that in the European view, namely to the European view of negating the Holocaust, which was problematic, namely that one should not completely ban it, but whereas one should ban incitation to hatred through negation of the Holocaust. I'm not saying that we should negate the Holocaust, but with regard to Williamson, what was far more useful was the polemic that existed, that grew throughout the world around Monsignor Williamson, and one should not have negationists that will become martyrs. There are countries where there is a law and other countries where there is no law against negationists, and it needs to be combated as strenuously as possible.
So, I've one last specific question before we go to the audience. This is for Mr. Swearingen and Caroline. So the United States announced yesterday that it would not be participating in Durban, despite the fact that the Durban conference document has been changed quite a bit so that it no longer discusses defamation of religion. Instead, it does include language about the negative stereotyping of religion, which presumably really does capture the same concept. But I would like to know what Brett's ideas are on whether the U.S. should be participating, or any other country for that matter, considering that this panel is obviously very opinionated about the merits of the defamations concept. And also,